In the distant reaches of the galaxy, beyond the last vestiges of charted space, there existed a small planet known as Vegren 9. Its surface was harsh and desolate, battered by sandstorms and littered with jagged rocks that could slice through even the toughest starship hull. But it wasn't the unforgiving landscape that made Vegren 9 a place of nightmares. It was the tribe. For centuries, legends whispered through spaceports and colonies about the Vegren, a race of towering alien women with luminous skin, sharp fangs, and an insatiable hunger. They were said to be fierce, warriors from a fallen civilization that had once ruled this sector of space. Now, their empire lay in ruins, and their hunger had only grown. No one dared to approach their territory. No one except one little human girl. 8-year-old Ava sat quietly aboard the freighter Starwind, listening to the hum of the engines. She was small for her age, with bright eyes and tangled brown hair, her clothing patched up from years of hand-me-downs. Her father, Captain Marcus, was a gruff, stoic man who rarely showed emotion, especially since Ava's mother had passed away. He had promised to keep Ava safe, to protect her from the dangers of the galaxy. But sometimes promises are hard to keep. The crew was on a supply run, passing by Vegren 9. Ava had heard the stories of the Vegren, just like everyone else. She had also overheard the whispers of how they were starving, cut off from the resources they once controlled. No one would trade with them, and they'd been left to die on their ravaged planet. It didn't sit right with her. "Captain, we're nearing Vegren 9, the first mate called from the front of the ship. Ava's father grunted, turning his attention to the controls. He planned to give the planet a wide berth, but Ava had other plans. While her father was distracted, she slipped out of the ship's hold and down the loading ramp when they were close enough to the surface. She didn't understand the fear everyone felt about the Vegren. Starving wasn't fair. When Ava reached the planet's surface, the wind howled around her, biting at her skin. She squinted against the dust but pushed forward, clutching the small pack she had filled with food supplies from the ship's kitchen. She didn't have to walk far before she saw them. The Vegren were tall, so tall that even hunched over, they dwarfed the craggy landscape. Their skin shimmered like moonlight, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dim. Ava could see that they were indeed starving. Their once proud forms were emaciated, their rib cages visible beneath their translucent skin. They sat in a circle around a dying fire, their once fierce expressions softened by exhaustion and hunger. But they still held their sharp weapons close. Ava took a deep breath and walked toward them. The tallest of the group, a Vegren woman with hair the color of the night sky, stood up as Ava approached. Her eyes narrowed, and her hand gripped a jagged blade at her side. The others stirred, a low growl rising in their throats. Ava stopped, her heart racing, but she did not run. She opened her pack and pulled out a bundle of food, small rations by human standards, but more than the Vegren had seen in months. "I brought this for you," Ava said, her voice barely audible over the wind. For a moment, there was only silence. The Vegren leader's eyes softened in confusion. No one had ever dared to approach them, much less offer them something without asking for tribute or payment. The leader stepped closer, kneeling down to Ava's level. The alien's large, glowing eyes bored into the little girl, studying her for any sign of deception. When she found none, she spoke in a low, guttural voice. "Why, human child?" Ava swallowed hard. "Because you're hungry." The leader blinked, taken aback by the simplicity of her answer. The other Vegren exchanged glances. Then, without a word, the leader took the food. She broke off a piece of the dried meat and handed it to one of the others, then another. Soon, the whole tribe was eating, their sharp fangs carefully tearing into the food as if they couldn't believe it was real. Ava stood there for what felt like hours, watching as they devoured the rations in silence. She could feel the tension in the air slowly dissipate, the threat fading as their hunger was sated, even if just for a moment. Finally, the leader spoke again. "What is your name, little one?" "Ava," she replied, her voice small but steady. The Vegren leader looked down at her with something that almost resembled a smile, though her fangs made it more unsettling than comforting. "Ava, you are different from the others. They fear us. I don't think it's fair that you're starving," Ava said, You shouldn't be left here to die. The leader's eyes flickered with something, perhaps hope or gratitude. It was hard to tell. We once ruled the stars, she said softly, but now we are forgotten. Abandoned? Ava hesitated, then spoke up again. Maybe I can help. The Vegren leader tilted her head. How? I'll tell my father. He'll come back. We could bring you more food. The leader's expression darkened for a moment, as if recalling the betrayals of humans in the past. But then she looked at the small girl standing before her, this child who had walked through the storm to feed them, who saw them not as monsters, but as people. Very well, Ava of Earth, the leader said. You have our gratitude. When Ava returned to the Starwind, her father was furious, until he saw the Vegren tribe standing at the edge of the landing zone. His hand hovered over his blaster, but he didn't draw it. They didn't look like the fierce warriors from the legends. They looked broken. And Ava stood in front of them, unafraid. Dad, she said softly, they need our help. Captain Marcus looked at his daughter, then at the tribe of starving alien women behind her. He sighed heavily, lowering his hand from the weapon. We'll help, he said gruffly, but we'll have to be careful. And so it was that the tribe of Vegren, feared by all, found their first human allies in the unlikeliest of places. A little girl with a kind heart and a small pack of food. And for the first time in centuries, the tribe dared to hope that they would survive. The alliance between the humans and the Vegren tribe was delicate, but it grew. Ava, the little girl who had no fear, became the bridge between two worlds. And in time, the tribe regained their strength, not as conquerors, but as survivors and friends.